This is breaking news. Just a short time ago, President Obama commuted nearly all of the remaining prison sentence of Chelsea Manning, the former Army intelligence analyst convicted of leaking military files and diplomatic cables to WikiLeaks. Also breaking tonight, the president pardoned retired Marine General James Cartwright, who was convicted for making false statements to investigators during a probe of leaks. Chase Strangio is on the phone. He's an attorney for Chelsea Manning and also works for the ACLU. Chase, thank you for joining us. And Chase, do you know why the president has done this? Did they give a written order?
Thanks so much for having me. We are just so overwhelmed and relieved. It's clear to us that President Obama recognized that if he didn't act now, Chelsea's life was very much in jeopardy, and she served 7 years almost. She has acknowledged, that her actions did not necessarily result in harm, but she apologized for them. And she's really suffered in a number of ways, including horrible stints of solitary confinement. And President Obama acted on the side of justice here.
Did you actually get a written order identifying what it was? Because I'm just want to go through this list. One is you said that Manning's life is in jeopardy, but of course you and I both know that you can do things like administrative segregation, which is a lousy way to be confined. But there are ways to supposedly protect people with protective custody. Or is it because the president thought that this was too severe a sentence? I mean, do you have any sort of express reasons by the White House why this was done?
We haven't received any express reasons by the White House, but I will say that administrative segregation is not generally a way to prevent someone from harming themselves. And so I think it's partly the risk to her life, and then the reality that I think, especially in retrospect, but even at the time, the 35-year sentence was particularly egregious, and she has served nearly 7 years, already longer than anyone in United States history for leaking documents to the press and the public interest. And so, we likely will never know the reasons for Obama's actions, but I think it was probably a combination of those things, and I truly do believe that this has saved her life.
Have you spoken to Chelsea Manning since the news came down?
We have not spoken to Chelsea. Unfortunately, we've been trying to get in touch with her. It's somewhat unusual that her attorneys have not had a chance to speak with her. Our understanding is that the military facility was not informed, and we were not informed until the same time that the information was distributed to the press this afternoon. So we are trying to get a hold of her.
When did you last speak to Chelsea Manning, and did you have any expectation that this was coming down?
I spoke with Chelsea around, I would say, 2 p.m. this afternoon, and she was managing her expectations, and she was nervous. There had been indications over the last week to suggest that the president may be acting to commute her sentence, but we didn't know when or to what amount. And so this really does come, with no real expectation on her end, and I am just so relieved and look forward very much to speaking with her so that I can share this news with her. Why
did Chelsea Manning do this in the first place?
There's really no way to know exactly why anyone takes actions that they did, and we can put together so many narratives in retrospect.
Sometimes they say why, though. Sometimes they say because I wanted to, or as an accident or something, or I was angry.
We know what Chelsea was incredibly troubled by what she saw, and she disclosed information because she wanted the public to know, and she wanted the American people to have an understanding of what our government was doing in our name. So certainly that we know, and the rest of it in terms of sort of how the last 7 years have been for her. We just know that she has suffered and that she acted in the public interest, and from there we just hope that she makes it out safely and is able to piece her life together. She's already been punished so severely for her actions, and hopefully she'll have a chance to move on.
Chase, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, the commutation getting a major reaction. Moments ago, Edward Snowden tweeted, "In 5 more months, you will be free. Thank you for what you did for everyone, Chelsea. Stay strong a while longer." Also weighing in, WikiLeaks, tweeting, quote, "Victory." A fiercely critical reaction from House Speaker Paul Ryan, who called the move outrageous. And, quote, "President Obama now leaves in place a dangerous precedent that those who compromise our national security won't be held accountable for their crimes." Major General Bob Scales is with me. General, I should tell you that moments ago I spoke with Senator John McCain, and I asked him, and I said on a 1 to 10 scale, if 10 is bad and 1 is good, what is this? He says this is an 11. 11. Your thoughts on this?
Well, first of all, let's take the personal issues off the table. Her sexual transformation obviously was traumatic, and she's had a rough time in prison, no doubt about it. I'm speaking as a soldier, and the bottom line is this is treason, pure and simple. She gave away to WikiLeaks 400,000 operational, not political, but operational documents that put soldiers in the field at risk, that put at risk Iraqi translators, to put at risk some Iraqi citizens who were collaborating with the American military during this tough period during the Iraqi war, and serious damage was caused. If you're a traitor and you feel bad about it, then that's fine. It's still treason. And treason, historically, in the military, has been punished by very severe sentences, and she leaves after 7 years, and that's not justice, and it's not justice to the people in uniform. The reaction in the Pentagon has been overwhelmingly negative, because what does this portend for the future? What does this mean next time a private sitting in front of a classified screen comes up with the idea, well, look what happened to Chelsea Manning. I'm going to follow my conscience, give away secrets about the military, and maybe I won't be punished.
Is there ever any time, when, in your mind, when a member of the military should disclose or leak information?
Absolutely not. I've seen senior officers go down for leaving secret documents on their desk overnight in the Pentagon. I've seen young majors under my command who slipped in an email or passed a piece of information at a party, go down, lose their rank, oftentimes go to prison. And here's a person that leaked 400,000 documents and serves only 7 years. And oh, by the way, when she gets out, as you can see by some of those quotes, she's going to be a national hero. What effect does that have on our men and women in places like Iraq and Afghanistan?
Why do you think President Obama did this? We don't have a written order, so it's hard to discern what it was, whether it was sort of a humanitarian thing because of difficulties, or whether he thought the sentence was too much, or whether he thought that he wasn't guilty or she wasn't guilty. I mean, we know what without knowing. Without a written order.
I'm guessing here, Greta, but I suspect it has to do with his humanitarian instincts. I think probably that he feels that 7 years is enough for the crime. But those of us who've been in combat, those of us who have relied on classified information to do our jobs, we don't see this as some minor transgression that can be mitigated by the President of the United States. This is a serious crime. It is essentially treason, and 7 years is not sufficient punishment for treason.
What about the commutation of General Cartwright?
I know Haas pretty well. The only issue I have with Haas is the effect this has on our lower-ranking men and women in uniform. There's a sense, I must admit to you, among our soldiers that privates get punished, lieutenants get punished, but generals get off. I'm glad that he's not going to be sent to prison, but at the same time, there's this underlying sentiment among the ranks that privates go to jail, generals get let off.
Glenn Greenwald is co-founding editor and investigative journalist at The Intercept. Glenn, your thoughts with this breaking news tonight about Chelsea Manning having her sentence commuted?
Well, I'm astonished to have heard the general say over and over that she committed treason, since not only wasn't she charged with treason, but treason means aiding and abetting the enemy. And she never passed documents to America's enemy. She passed it to the American public. And it has become one of the most valuable journalistic archives to inform Americans about what its government is doing. So unless you regard the American public as the enemy from whom secrets have to be withheld, as the general apparently does, to keep calling it treason is just warped. I mean, she did break the law. There's no question about that, but she wasn't even charged with treason. And I think that the last point that he made was particularly crucial, which is this double standard. She was in prison for 7 years. Not one document that she released was top secret. They were all at this low-level classification of confidential or secret. By contrast, General Petraeus leaked among the most sensitive top secret documents in all of the American government, and he didn't go to prison for a single day. And his motive was not to inform the public, but to let his mistress write a hagiography about him. So I think that when you look at what she did, the fact that no harm has ever been demonstrated, the fact that it has served the public by multiple journalistic stories, and the fact that she suffered in prison for 7 years, it is a very just outcome.
You know, Glenn, we journalists, I mean, many of us sort of thrive on leaks, things that are leaked, but the military, it's a little bit, you know, it's a whole different ballgame than we in the media. In your mind, is there any time when someone in the military should not be leaking to the media?
Sure, everybody agrees that the government has legitimate secrets, but as Chase discussed at the beginning of your show, she was somebody who volunteered to go to Iraq and thought that this was a noble mission and was so horrified by what she had seen and saw the huge gap between what the government was telling the American people they were doing in Iraq and the reality of what they were doing, that she couldn't in good conscience let these crimes go unreported, and that's when you want someone to step forward.
All right, let me put my lawyer hat on. Did she, if you know, I mean, I realize that each case is different, but was her sentence a greater sentence than someone similarly situated? In terms of, you know, I have no sense of whether 35 years was a sentence that was something that other people got for something similar.
No, she got the largest sentence in American history for any person who leaked classified information, not by selling it to, you know, an adversary government or passing it to harm America, but to leaking it to journalists or through the public. She got the largest sentence in all of American history, obviously way larger than what General Petraeus got.
General, two questions. One is the comparison to General Petraeus. That's the first thing. And then the second thing, if the information that she leaked caused no harm, does that make a difference in your mind?
First of all, we don't know that's true. Glenn is, as you know, is an associate of Snowden, and so that kind of puts paid to his side of the argument. We don't know that's for sure, but we do know the information he provided to WikiLeaks wound up in the hands of Al-Qaeda and in the hands of the Taliban. Names were released that shouldn't have been, mostly Iraqi soldiers and Iraqi collaborators who could very well have been punished, who could have suffered retribution. We just don't know that. But look, it is treason when a person gives up information that harms the nation and, more importantly, harms his fellow soldiers. This isn't about national security or about views of the American public. This is about our buddies, men and women in uniform who have to share risk and have to keep secrets in order to stay alive on the battlefield, and Chelsea Manning violated that to a T.
How is it different from General Petraeus' situation?
Well, what Dave Petraeus did is wrong, and you know he and I are good friends. But what he did, it was against the law. Released information to his biographer. The information, the difference, was never allowed out. It never made it into the information
Well, that
itself.
was good fortune for him. I mean,
good fortune.
Exactly. That was sort of good.
And he was punished, but he didn't go to jail, which I think speaks a little bit to what I mentioned to you earlier about Hoss Cartwright.
And that the generals to get treated differently.
You got it.
Glenn, what about Snowden? What's your thought on that?
Well, I mean, the difference, of course, is that while Chelsea Manning has suffered for 7 years in prison, the UN found she was subject to essentially torture, inhumane abuse. Edward Snowden is not currently in prison. I think Snowden and Manning are very similar. As Daniel Ellsberg has said, who virtually everyone regards as a hero, they both acted to inform the public about things they ought to know. So hopefully Obama has some time. He can commute or pardon Snowden, though I don't think that's likely, but Snowden's not actually in prison. He's free.
General, why do these men that have access, or men and women in the military who seem to be quite new in the military, whether have access to this information?
That's a great question. He had access to what's called the SIPR.
I guess we call her she.
She has access to what's called the SIPR net. And it's a net that allows the military to quickly exchange secret information, not top secret information. And so it was put in place to allow soldiers to communicate with each other. Unfortunately, as we've learned since, the SIPR net is not something that should be accessed by a private. And that was a screw-up on the part of the military in Iraq, and they've taken measures in recent years to fix that. You're absolutely right. A private should not have had access to 400,000 military documents and something like 200,000 diplomatic documents. That's basically an environment that's just simply too permissive.
PJ Crowley is on the phone. He's the former State Department spokesperson under President Obama. PJ, there's a diplomatic aspect to this because some of the material that was released were diplomatic cables. As you examine the situation tonight, because a lot of controversy, some people are cheering this, and some people are extremely dismayed by this. Even Senator John McCain said on a 1 to 10, this is an 11 bad to him. So your thoughts tonight?
Well, I think there's an appropriate balance here. I don't agree that what Chelsea Manning did represented treason. I do think that she harmed American national interest, and she put real people at risk. The diplomatic cables, a number of them revealed civilian sources in various places, including in autocratic societies, and their compromise required the United States to help move them.
PJ, let me interrupt you for 1 second. I don't know if it doesn't meet the legal definition of treason, wasn't charged with treason, but if you are harming the American national interest and you are disclosing information you know you shouldn't, how is that, sort of not, maybe not treasonous in terms of it wasn't charged with it, but how is not that a very serious offense?
Well, it is a very serious offense, and a 35-year sentence was a serious punishment. I think we also have to distinguish between, a civilian court of justice where you put people away, to maintain public safety, and a military court which is primary, its purpose is to reinforce good order and discipline. Right. I think that what we have here is a balance where the message coming out of the Manning case was, hey, if you do this, there'll be severe consequences. But hers is and was a unique case. Her struggles in uniform, her abuse, mistreatment at Quantico, the failure of the military to put adequate computer network security in Iraq. And I think there are extenuating circumstances. I, for one, having both served at the State Department during the WikiLeaks situation and also having served in the military for 26 years, I don't think that it was necessary for her to serve the full 35-year sentence.
Well, I'm sure they're going to have a lot of talk about this over the next couple of days because there are a lot of people who feel very passionate on both sides of this. Gentlemen, thank you, all three of you, very much. Coming up, repealing Obamacare. Are you for it or against it? New polls showing the law more popular than ever, but not breaking that 50% mark popularity.